The Trial of Dr. Elena Reeves. The immense viewing dome of Callisto 9 space station offered a breathtaking panorama of Jupiter's swirling storms, but Dr. Elena Reeves had no time to appreciate the view. Flanked by two imposing Craxian security officers, their scaled skin glistening under the station's artificial lighting, she was marched through the central concourse toward the Hall of Adjudication. Alien spectators from a dozen different species turned to watch her pass, their whispers following in her wake. Another human who thinks rules don't apply to them. Heard she desecrated the sacred grounds on Proction IV. Elena kept her eyes forward, her back straight despite the gravity adjuster at her waist struggling to compensate for Callisto 9's settings, calibrated for the comfort of its predominantly non-human inhabitants. The weight pressed down on her shoulders like accusation. The Hall of Adjudication was an imposing chamber, its architecture an unsettling blend of various galactic cultures, soaring Arcturian arches, precise Terran angles, and flowing Gironi curves that seemed to defy physics. At the center stood a raised dais where Magistrate Thex presided, his Voth ancestry evident in his elongated skull and the ridge of iridescent scales running from his forehead down his spine. His six-fingered hands rested on the polished surface of the judicial console. Dr. Elena Reeves of Earth, the court announcer, a hovering AI projection, declared, charged with trespassing on protected lands, disturbing ecological equilibrium, and desecration of culturally significant sites on Proction IV. The magistrate's vertical pupils narrowed as they focused on Elena. The evidence against you is substantial, Dr. Reeves. Your research vessel was detected within the boundaries of the Veil of Shadows, a sacred site to the indigenous Proctions and a protected ecological reserve under Galactic Concordat, Regulation 47 Beta. Elena stepped forward. Magistrate, if I may. You may not. Thex interrupted, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic overtones of Voth speech. The investigative phase has concluded. This is the judgment phase. The evidence speaks for itself. He gestured to the massive holographic display behind him, showing Elena's research vessel hovering above delicate crystalline formations that pulsed with ethereal light. Your actions demonstrate a flagrant disregard for both cultural sensitivity and ecological preservation. The formations you disturbed take centuries to regenerate. Thex's scales fluttered in what Elena recognized as an expression of disgust. Typical human behavior, believing your scientific curiosity trumps established boundaries. The gallery murmured in agreement. A Gironi diplomat nodded, its tentacled head bobbing. They've always been this way, it whispered to its companion, not bothering to lower its voice, ever since they joined the Concordat. Elena clutched her datapad tighter but maintained her composure. She had expected bias, but the open hostility surprised her. As this is your first documented offense, Thex continued, I am being lenient. A fine of 750,000 credits and suspension of your xenoresearch license for 7 standard years. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even by Concordat standards, the fine was extortionate, and the suspension would effectively end her career. Elena's academic foundation would collapse, along with the livelihoods of the 20 researchers who depended on it. Magistrate, Elena said, her voice clear and steady despite the shock. I request the right to present evidence in my defense. Thex's hand hovered over the gavel. By law, he couldn't deny this request, though his expression made clear he considered it a waste of time. Proceed, Dr. Reeves. But be warned, attempting to waste this court's time will only compound your penalties. Elena activated her datapad, and the large display behind Thex flickered as new information transferred to it. I would like to submit my credentials for the record. Your human academic qualifications are already noted, Thex said dismissively. Not my human credentials, Magistrate. My Galactic Concordat credentials. Thex's console chimed as the data transferred. The Magistrate's vertical pupils widened fractionally as he reviewed the information, the first crack in his composure. The chamber fell silent, the spectators sensing the shift in atmosphere. This indicates you are the Concordat's appointed xenogeology specialist for the Proction system, Thex said slowly, his harmonic tones flattening with surprise. Appointed by the council itself 3 standard months ago. Yes, magistrate. And you claim to have had permission to enter the restricted zone. Elena nodded. I have evidence that will explain not only my authorized presence there, but why someone might want to prevent my research from continuing. The murmuring in the gallery grew louder. Thex silenced it with a gesture, his attention now fully on Elena, previous contempt replaced with reluctant interest. Present your evidence, Dr. Reeves. Elena activated her holographic projector. A 3-dimensional model of Proction IV materialized between her and the magistrate, rotating slowly. Red markers pulsed across its surface in an unmistakable pattern. These indicators represent the crystal formations across the Veil of Shadows, she explained. As you can see, they're dying. Thex leaned forward, scientific curiosity overcoming his earlier prejudice. The projection zoomed in on one red area, showing once brilliant crystalline structures now dulled, fracture lines spreading through their previously perfect geometry. 4 months ago, the Concordat Council appointed me to lead the investigation into this phenomenon, Elena continued. I've published more peer-reviewed research on Proction crystalline formations than anyone in the galaxy. She transferred official documents to the main screen, displaying the Concordat seal, a spiral galaxy with 19 stars representing the founding species. My research expedition was not only permitted, it was mandated by the highest authority in the Concordat. Thex's eyes narrowed as he verified the authorization codes. They were legitimate. If you were acting under council orders, why wasn't this court informed? I filed all the proper documentation. Elena's voice hardened as she displayed a series of transmission logs. My team submitted all required permits 3 weeks before our expedition. We received confirmation that all relevant authorities have been notified. These appear to be in order, Thex admitted, reviewing the logs with growing confusion. Yet we received no such notifications. Exactly, Magistrate. Someone doesn't want my research to continue. The hologram changed, showing Elena's research vessel above the crystal formations. Far from causing damage, the ship was carefully deploying specialized equipment that hovered around the crystals without contact. My team developed these non-invasive sampling drones specifically for this mission, Elena explained. They use null gravity fields to avoid disturbing even a single crystal filament. We took every precaution to protect the formations we're trying to save. The gallery was silent now, the earlier hostility replaced by growing interest. But why would anyone want to prevent your research? Thex asked, his judicial mask slipping to reveal genuine scientific curiosity. Elena's expression grew grave. Because what's killing the crystals isn't natural, Magistrate. It's deliberate. And my team has uncovered evidence of who's responsible. The holographic display changed again, showing microscopic images of the crystal structures. These are resonance patterns within the dying crystals. They show exposure to targeted sonic frequencies that shatter their internal matrix, frequencies that don't occur naturally on Proction IV. Thex studied the images, his scientific background evident in his focused analysis. This appears to be methodical destruction. It is, Elena confirmed. Someone is deliberately destroying the Veil of Shadows. The question is why. One of the court officials, a tall Arcturian with silvery skin, abruptly stood and moved toward the exit. Thex noticed the movement and frowned. Bailiff, detain Director Kelvin, he ordered. The Craxian security officers moved swiftly, blocking the Arcturian's escape. Elena looked at the magistrate in surprise. You know who's behind this? I'm beginning to have suspicions, Thex replied, his tone now completely different, professional and focused. Director Kelvin oversees mineral rights applications for this sector. If someone wanted to mine beneath the Veil of Shadows, they'd need the crystals gone first, Elena finished, and they'd need someone to take the blame for their destruction. The court erupted into chaos as the implications became clear. Vex struck his gavel repeatedly until order was restored. "Dr. Reeves," he said, his voice carrying a formal tone that silenced the room, "it appears I owe you an apology. Not only were you acting within your authority, but you've uncovered what may be a significant criminal conspiracy." Elena met his gaze steadily. "Magistrate, this is bigger than either of us anticipated. The crystal formations aren't just beautiful, they're sentient. Preliminary data from my research suggests they communicate through the resonance patterns that are being destroyed." The revelation stunned the courtroom into silence. Even Thex seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "We may be witnessing an attempted genocide," Elena continued quietly, "and someone tried to use your court to stop me from proving it." Thex rose to his full height, scales shifting to a deep purple that Elena recognized as a sign of Voth determination. "This proceeding is hereby suspended. Dr. Reeves, all charges against you are dismissed." He turned to address the security officers holding the Arcturian official. "Take Director Kelvin to interrogation. I want to know who he's working with." He looked back at Elena, vertical pupils dilating in what might have been respect. "Dr. Reeves, the Concordat will need your expertise more than ever now. Would you be willing to lead a joint investigation team?" Elena straightened, feeling the weight of the station's gravity adjustment less burdensome now. "That's why I'm here, Magistrate, to uncover the truth, no matter what species it implicates." As the gallery buzzed with excitement at this unexpected turn of events, Elena couldn't help but notice how quickly the earlier prejudice had evaporated. Science had a way of transcending cultural boundaries, even in a galaxy as diverse as theirs. But her work was just beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, proving deliberate destruction of a potentially sentient species and bringing the perpetrators to justice. Magistrate Thex descended from his dais and approached her. "It seems I've been guilty of the very prejudice I criticize humans for," he admitted quietly. "Perhaps we both have something to learn from this situation." Elena nodded. "The first lesson of senescence, Magistrate. Never assume you understand something, or someone, based on limited data." For the first time, Thex's mouth curved in what Elena recognized as the Voth equivalent of a smile. "A lesson I won't forget, Doctor. Now, shall we begin our investigation?" The truth revealed. The temporary office assigned to Elena aboard Callisto 9 buzzed with activity. Holographic displays filled the air with data streams, geological surveys, and crystalline resonance patterns. In the 3 days since her dramatic courtroom revelation, she had been joined by a hastily assembled team of specialists from across the Concordat. Magistrate Thex himself had taken personal interest in the investigation, temporarily stepping down from his judicial duties to contribute his expertise in Proxian ecology. "These resonance patterns are more complex than I initially believed," Elena said, manipulating a 3-dimensional model of crystal structures. "They're not just communicating, they're preserving information." Thex studied the patterns, his vertical pupils dilating with interest. "Like a library, more like a living archive," Elena replied. "Each formation appears to store different types of data. My hypothesis is that they collectively form a network, sharing and preserving information across generations." The magistrate's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue hue. "And someone is systematically destroying this network." He wasn't asking a question. "Precisely." Elena expanded the holographic display to show the entire veil of shadows. "The destruction pattern isn't random. It's targeted specifically at the oldest, most developed crystal clusters first, like burning down ancient libraries before destroying more recent records." A Gyroni analyst undulated its tentacles in the species' gesture of distress. "But why would anyone risk galactic censure for destroying protected formations? What could possibly be worth that cost?" The door to the office slid open as a Craxian security officer entered, escorting a nervous-looking human man in corporate attire. "Dr. Reeves," the officer announced, "this is Marcus Vega, former geological consultant for Nexus Mining Corporation." Elena turned to face the newcomer. "Mr. Vega, thank you for coming forward. Didn't have much choice after seeing your courtroom holo. Vega said, fidgeting with the cuff of his sleeve. It's gone too far. People weren't supposed to get hurt. Magistrate Thex gestured to an empty chair. Perhaps you should start at the beginning, Mr. Vega. The consultant sank into the seat, looking small beneath the towering Voth magistrate's gaze. 3 standard years ago, Nexus Mining commissioned a deep geological survey of Proxion IV. Standard procedure, nothing illegal about it. We were looking for demite deposits. Demite? Elena asked, frowning. The superconductor mineral. The very same, Vega confirmed. It's become critical for quantum computing arrays. Prices have quadrupled in the last decade as supplies dwindle. My survey found something unexpected. The largest demite deposit ever discovered in the Concordat. Enough to supply the entire galactic economy for centuries. Let me guess, Thex interjected, his scales darkening. Located directly beneath the Veil of Shadows. Nexus couldn't legally mine there, Vega continued. The Veil is protected under 17 different Concordat regulations, so they developed a long-term strategy. Discredit the value of the crystal formations, then apply for mining rights once the area was declassified. And the sonic disruption technology, Elena pressed. Designed to look like natural deterioration. The plan was to convince the Concordat that the formations were dying anyway, so mining wouldn't be destroying anything valuable. Vega stared at his hands. I resigned when I realized what they intended, but the project continued without me. Thex's scales had shifted to a deep crimson, anger, and Director Kelvin's role. Bribed to fast-track the declassification once enough formations had deteriorated, Vega explained, and to create administrative obstacles for anyone investigating too closely, like losing Dr. Reeves' permits and redirecting her notifications. Elena exchanged glances with Thex. When I arrived anyway and started collecting data that would expose the artificial deterioration. They needed you discredited, Vega finished. Setting you up for legal trouble accomplished that while simultaneously positioning you as the scapegoat for damaging the crystals. A clever strategy, Thex admitted grudgingly. If Dr. Reeves hadn't been appointed by the council itself, it might have succeeded. Elena turned back to the holographic display, expanding the resonance patterns. There's something else here, she said, her voice taking on a new intensity. These patterns don't just store information. They're getting more complex over time. Evolution? Asked a Paxian scientist, her feathered crest rising with interest. No, Elena said slowly, realization dawning. It's adaptation. The crystal network is responding to the attacks. Look at these more recent formations. They've altered their structure to be more resistant to the sonic frequencies being used against them. The implications silenced the room. Thex was the first to speak, his voice hushed with reverence. They're defending themselves. This isn't just sentience, it's collective intelligence, which makes this attempted genocide, as you suggested in court, the Paxian scientist concluded. Elena nodded grimly. And now we can prove it. 2 weeks later, Elena stood on the surface of Proxion IV, the veil of shadows stretching before her in breathtaking majesty. Crystalline formations rose from the purple soil like translucent cathedrals, catching the light of the binary stars and fracturing it into spectrums no human eye could fully appreciate. Her environmental suit allowed her to breathe in the methane-heavy atmosphere, while specialized goggles helped her see the resonance patterns flowing between the crystal structures, rivers of information invisible to the naked eye. Beside her stood Magistrate Thex, more comfortable in the alien environment with only minimal breathing apparatus. His scales had taken on a reverential golden hue that Elena had never seen before. The council's verdict was unanimous, he said, his voice carrying through the comm system. Nexus Mining has been disbanded, its assets seized to fund restoration efforts. The Veil of Shadows has been reclassified as a Class 1 protected entity, the highest level of protection the Concordat can offer. And the crystals? Elena asked, watching the delicate patterns of light flow through the nearest formation. Officially recognized as a non-corporeal sentient species, Thex confirmed. The first of its kind to receive full rights under Concordat law. The Council has approved your proposal for a permanent research station here, with you as its director. Elena smiled behind her mask. And what about you, Magistrate? Back to the courtroom. Thex turned to her, vertical pupils widening in what she now recognized as amusement. The Council has asked me to serve as judicial liaison to your research station. If you'll have me, that is. I think that would be ideal, Elena replied. Though I hope you won't be judging my research methods too harshly. On the contrary, Dr. Reeves, I find I have much to learn from them. Thex gestured toward the crystal formations. Shall we continue our first official communication attempt? Elena nodded and activated the specialized equipment they had developed. Gentle resonance waves, carefully calibrated to match the crystal's own patterns, emanated from the device. Almost immediately, the nearest formations responded, their internal structures shifting to create new patterns that rippled outward through the network. They're responding more quickly now, Elena observed, monitoring the data stream on her wrist display. They recognize us from our previous visits. Remarkable, Thex murmured. To think we almost lost this opportunity for understanding because of greed and prejudice, including my own. That's the thing about prejudice, Elena said thoughtfully. It blinds us to possibilities. When I first stood in your courtroom, you saw only a human who didn't respect boundaries. I saw only an alien magistrate determined to make an example of me. And now? Thex asked. Elena gestured to the magnificent landscape around them. Now I see a colleague. Someone as committed to knowledge and truth as I am, regardless of which planet we each call home. The crystals around them pulsed with new patterns, more complex than any they had recorded previously. Elena's instruments struggled to keep up with the data flow. They're responding to our conversation, she realized with excitement. Not just to our calibrated signals, they're learning our communication patterns at an exponential rate. Thex's scales shifted to bright silver, the Voth expression of profound wonder. Perhaps they have something to teach us about communication across differences. As if in response, the crystal formations around them began to synchronize, creating a harmonic resonance that both humans and Voth could perceive, a bridge between vastly different sensory systems. For the first time, Elena felt she wasn't just observing the crystals, but was being observed in return. Understood, perhaps. I believe, she said slowly, this is just the beginning of something remarkable. Back on Callisto 9, the news of the Proxian crystal intelligence spread rapidly through the station. Species that had previously viewed humans with suspicion now approached Elena with questions, seeking her insights. The courtroom where she had once stood accused now hosted a series of lectures on interspecies communication and the possibility of non-biological sentience. The case became a turning point in Concordat legal precedent. For the first time, a non-corporeal entity had been granted full legal personhood. The implications rippled through galactic society, challenging long-held assumptions about the nature of intelligence itself. 6 months after her trial, Elena stood at the viewing dome where her journey had begun, gazing at Jupiter's swirling storms. The weight of the station's gravity no longer felt like an accusation, but simply another environment to adapt to, one of many in a diverse galaxy. Dr. Reeves, Magistrate Thex's distinctive voice called from behind her. The Council transmission is ready. They're eager to hear our latest findings. Elena turned from the view with a smile. Let's not keep them waiting. We have quite a story to tell. As they walked together toward the communication center, Elena reflected on how much had changed. What had begun as a simple research expedition, derailed by prejudice and corporate greed, had transformed into a diplomatic mission of unprecedented importance. Humans, often viewed with suspicion in the wider galaxy, were now leading an initiative that could fundamentally change how sentient rights were defined. Something amusing, Doctor? Thex asked, noticing her expression. Just thinking about first impressions, Elena replied. And how grateful I am that they can be overcome. The magistrate's scales flickered with understanding. Indeed, The crystals have shown us that communication across profound differences is possible, if we're willing to listen. And that, Elena said as they entered the communication chamber where representatives from a dozen species awaited them, may be the most important discovery of all.